And that brings us to item 10, manager's report.
We have one item on tonight's manager's report. It is an update to our electrical aggregation efforts, and our new expert in all things electricity, including ComEd and aggregation, our management analyst, Allison Deitch, will present tonight's report.
Well, thank you. We're looking forward to an electric presentation.
I will try. Thank you. Good evening. Purpose of tonight's presentation is to provide an update on the next steps in our aggregation process. Oh, that's neat. Okay. You've seen this slide before. I showed this 4 weeks or 3 weeks ago when we talked about the process of aggregation. It has 4 general steps. In general terms, we are now at step 2. We've passed the referendum and we are preparing to present a plan of governance for review by the community. After that, we would have a competitive bid process, and then finally the opt-out process that would take place prior to switching over to the alternative retail electric supplier. Here's a little more detail on the current status of the program. The village now has the authority to transfer the electricity supply for residents and eligible small commercial businesses to what is called an alternative retail electric supplier. The benefit to our residents is that we will only accept a bid that lowers their supply rate. In other communities that have completed this process, the savings to residents has been between 15 and 30%. So as we continue this process, we are at a decision point. We have 2 options. In December, the Village Council authorized a letter of intent to join with several other municipalities to form an aggregation group. We're not obligated to continue with the group. However, it is important to know that either way, the bid process would be fair and competitive, and only bids that lower the supply rate for electricity will be accepted. So we have 2 options. We can formally join the group through an intergovernmental agreement, or we can move forward and initiate our own program. Because there are several municipalities in the same position that we are currently, we may be able to look for other partnership opportunities. Our staff recommendation at this point is to proceed independently. In this process, we would run our own program, including drafting and approving our own plan of governance and setting the schedule for public hearings as well as for the bid process. We've identified some benefits to our own, to creating our own village program. First of all, we've received feedback from residents throughout this process. We've also received a policy recommendation from the Environmental Concerns Commission that asks the village to consider a power mix that includes 25% green power. By drafting our own plan of governance, we can incorporate the feedback we've received, and we can take into consideration the comments we hear at public hearings. Additionally, we've been able to speak with staff members from other municipalities that have already completed the process, and they've been able to share some important lessons learned that we believe will make our process effective. One other thing I should add up here is that we would have the ability to plan for the length of the contract. And then also, by moving forward without the assistance of a consultant, we ensure that our residents do not pay any fees above the electricity supply rate. This is not unheard of. There are a few other municipalities that have done this, including the partnership of Grays Lake, Lincolnwood, and Oak Brook, which partnered to do this last year without a consultant. A few last points here. By leading the process, we are able to manage the schedule, and the council would have the opportunity to review and accept the supplier bid. And finally, as we look into some partnerships, we would look for municipalities that would most likely accept our plan of governance and our schedule. So this takes us forward to our proposed schedule for our aggregation process. And I should say first that this is a proposed schedule, that this may change as we go. But overall, we're proposing a schedule that would allow a switchover date in mid or late summer. So it's tentative, but it would, we believe anyway, it would get us to a switchover date later this year. Hope you can see this. The plan of governance we are hoping to publish next week according to this schedule to make available for community review. We are required to have 2 public hearings prior to adopting the plan of governance and an ordinance authorizing the purchase of electricity. Those would take place at the 1st and 3rd council meetings in May. After we do that, we will be able to, actually work on the bid process. We are hoping to do that in the week of May 21st, 2012, which would then allow us to award the contract for the purchase of electricity on June 12th, 2012. The opt-out process would take place for several weeks prior to the switchover date, and we would then implement the new contract, or as it's called, the switchover, in August and September of 2012. Like I've said a few times, this proposed schedule could change, but our goal is still for it to take place in late summer, and we will, of course, update the timeline as we make any changes on our village website. And we are also continually updating our frequently asked questions on the website. If there are any questions, be happy to take them now. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the presentation. Before I turn to the council, I'll just ask if there are any questions from any members of the audience with respect to electrical aggregation, next steps. It's a high voltage topic with a lot of juice behind it, so if anybody has any questions or comments, just making sure you're all awake out there. Yes, please. Of course, don't run away, Allison. We'll be
Good evening again. I'm Gordon Goodman, 5834 Middle, and I wanted to rise in support of the staff's recommendation. I think it's very wise for us to look around at the various opportunities that are opening up in light of the referenda that have been passed throughout the area. I think this staff recommendation is very close to the ideas that we were advancing to the council in a letter written by Pierce Donner's Heritage Alliance and sent over the signature of our chair, Ken Lerner, some weeks before the referendum, and we did get some favorable responses from some members of the council. So I'm hoping that the council will be sympathetic with the staff's recommendation. I did have a question about this. It seems that with this very tight, or relatively tight timetable, that the staff must have already prepared a fair amount of work toward this possible plan of governance in order to be able to publish it shortly and hold hearings. I'm wondering if that's true, and secondly, I'm wondering if there's any role for the Environmental Concerns Commission in this consideration. I didn't see that as part of the timetable that we were presented with. Thank you.
Good news, Dr. Goodman and Council. We have been working diligently on our own plan of governance. It's about ready to go. And we did check in with the Environmental Concerns Commission a couple months ago and got some policy recommendations from them. And in fact, those are the ones that Allison mentioned, that we should pursue options for renewable or green energy. And you'll see once the plan of governance is published, that's exactly what we're calling for. Some options that could be considered once the bids come in.
Thank you. And thank you for the questions. Any other questions or comments from members of the audience with respect to electrical aggregation next steps? Questions or comments from the council, Commissioner Durkin?
Yeah, thank you. You know, based on doing this independently, how is that going to affect our ability to get a good rate? I remember from the previous presentations we had, it was a volume because there were so many communities and the number of.
Yeah, what we found is...
How's that going to play out for us if we go independent with this? Because I know there are some concerns.
Yes, there are economy of scale opportunities at work in the market, and we've researched that quite a bit. We want to make sure that what we do results in the lowest possible price for our residents and small businesses. We found that we're of a size on our own that has already gone to market. I think Allison mentioned a couple of towns that got together that the three of them were the same size as Downers Grove, and they got a very competitive rate.
The three of them combined were the same size as
The three of them combined were the same size as Downers Grove, and they got a very competitive rate, a rate very similar to communities that had gone together and were significantly larger. We will continue to look at how the economy of scale effects interact with how many fees and how much fees we would have to pay. Under the Will County Governmental League proposal that we've been working on, there'd be $60,000 worth of fees that would have to be paid for by the residents and small businesses.
Right.
Under this proposal, there would be no fees on top of, we would just be doing this work on their behalf. So we have to balance the amount of fees and the impact of an economy of scale. We will continue to work on those issues as we look for partnership opportunities. And frankly, if Will County Governmental League continues to address our concerns about value, fees, responsiveness in the plan of governance to the needs of our residents, then we'll continue that dialogue with them. Those are our main concerns. I do want to note that I did talk to Hugh O'Hara from the Will County Governmental League today on those issues. We'll continue with that dialogue shortly. And most of all, I just want to thank them for reaching out to us early on when we were not part of a council of government. They've been very helpful, and we've learned a lot from them. And even if we go this alone or end up somehow back with them, if they address our concerns that were identified, very appreciative of their efforts.
Other questions or comments from the council? Commissioner Waldeck?
I'll agree with Commissioner Durkin's concerns. I think there's power in numbers, and I still believe that. I'm a little concerned if we go it alone, especially if we're on a tight schedule. Like I say, I tend to agree with the power in numbers. And you mentioned that the reduction in rates was between 15 and 30%, and if we could get a report back on which one's got the 15, which one's got the 30, did they go it alone, did they go as a group, get some comparisons so that we can see who got the 30 and copy the folks that got the 30. There's also been a lot, and this is just a comment, there's been a lot written out there about government taking over and that kind of thing. And I'm glad this referendum passed, because for some time I've been getting a lot of stuff in the mail from companies saying, quit ComEd and join us and we'll save you money. And they all describe different things, and I go, gee, I wish I had an expert that would help me make this decision. And bottom line is, I can make this decision anytime I want on my own anyway. So I'm kind of glad, I am glad that the referendum passed, that maybe we can get some expert opinions in here and work as a group, get a better deal for everybody. And if I really don't trust my government, I can still go out and do it on my own and see if I can get a 30% or maybe wind up paying even more than ComEd charges. So, but anyway, just to let the folks know out there that this is a possible great benefit for everybody, and it's nothing like the power grabs that people are talking about. It's not that at all. And that's all I have.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Chanel?
The only thing is, I wish we could get this going so that peak electric season, which is the summer, our residents could actually see the power of lower rates. But obviously, that's not going to happen. Well, we may happen towards the end of it, but I guess it will give us an opportunity to find out how much we can save next summer. So.
Thank you. Commissioner Barnett.
Thanks, Mayor. Just something, you guys put the ICC link up on the website, which I appreciate. Another thing I was wondering if we could do, I'm not trying to just create work, but for those at home that are wanting to watch this and review it and think it through, is it possible to take, I think we've had 3 or so presentations. I think we had one early on from Integris, one from Will County, and a couple maybe from Allison. Mm-hmm. Could we somehow snip those and put those up so people can access them quickly when they're on the aggregation site?
Yes.
That'd be great.
All right, maybe put some Michael Bublé in the background, keep it entertaining. Commissioner Rankin?
I know we're going to see the plan of governance next week, but when you talk about the power mix, are we planning on bidding it so you could see, so we can decide once the bids come in how it's going to play out?
Yes, absolutely. The example that we've looked at is Oak Parks. They did a few different mixes in their bid documents, and the council was actually able to look at what the best rate would be and what the mix would be if they had a different option. So we're anticipating having several options in the bid documents.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Well, I think the consistent theme on this entire topic from day one has always been about options. First of all, having the option to do something other than ComEd, and then once you go through that door, you have more doors you can choose. As Commissioner Waldeck mentioned, at the end of the day, if you don't like what Downers Grove is proposing, despite or regardless of which way they end up arriving at it, you can opt out and you don't have to do it our way at all. So this is all about options, and I appreciate that we originally, when we first started down this path prior to the referendum, wanted to have an option that we could jump upon right away if the referendum had passed, and that I think it made good sense to have reached out to the Will County Governmental League and to have at least had an option available with a non-binding arrangement that if we wanted to, we could go that path and sign up with them and be done with it. But I think consistent with the Downers Grove way and preserving lots of options, I think it's also equally wise to have not committed ourselves irrevocably to that position, but instead, now that we know the referendum is passed, we now know a number of other communities in DuPage County and in surrounding areas have also passed these referendums, that there are other options. And I think really all we're talking about is exploring other options, because at the end of the day, we want to get the best outcome for our residents if they choose to participate, because ultimately residents have the option of whether or not to go with our option. So there's lots of options here. So that's all I see this as being, you know, if we were to go the independent route, the three principal benefits would be, number one, that we would be able to do this in what I've referred to as the Downers Grove way, or our governance model, whereas otherwise we would be signing on to an existing governance model that started a long time ago, and quite frankly, they're not going to stop in their tracks and change everything just for us. But we may end up going that route anyway. I mean, we're not saying that we're not foreclosing the option of the Will County Governmental Group, as Manager Fieldman mentioned. We're just opening up, making sure that we have other options to weigh and consider. But so, at any rate, the three advantages I see would be, number one, doing this the Downers Grove way, which would be bids and comparing things like we like to do, and having meetings and openly discussing it. I know we've gotten some feedback from our residents who voted in favor of the referendum that they would like to do this the Downers Grove way, and so I think we're being sensitive to that. The other advantage is cost. We know what the cost is of pursuing the Will County Governmental League. If there are ways to get the same place at a lower cost, then it would only make sense for us to pursue those. And the third option is more options. For example, going in our way allows some additional opportunities in terms of green energy, renewable energy that aren't currently available but might be available in the Will County Governmental League model. As the manager pointed out, there's also the advantage of additional options for us in terms of timing and the terms of an agreement. We have more flexibility. So again, we could still pursue the Will County Governmental League option. We're not foreclosing it, but I think it's only smart and prudent to be exploring other options. And if there are other communities in DuPage or elsewhere that we would partner up with, that it would be a better deal, then I think that would be worth pursuing. Again, we get to control, if we do it ourselves, what the term is. We can fix the terms, so no matter what we do, we're not only committing to a year, 2 years, 3 years, whatever it might be. Kind of like when you roll over a CD. You get to choose your term and what benefits you get from that. And then at the end of the day, again, residents can choose whether or not they want to participate in whatever option we select. So again, I think the moral of the story and the theme of the day are options, options, and more options. So I appreciate staff bringing this forward and presenting us with them, because it's one thing that we do like, we like options.
Thank you, Mayor. That ends the manager's report.